Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, and this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with a particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting 375-414-6055 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. So I call us to order at 6:02 p.m. And in terms of the agenda, I just have one. I think I have one revision. I don't think we have either one of these sets of minutes to approve, and that is my fault because I just got the link to Carolyn today. So I think we can table that.
I have been begging her all week.
She has been.
Please,
Katie, Katie,
Yes.
I think you do have the 8:14 minutes. No?
Oh, you know what? Dennis, did you send those out at the, right before the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone have a chance to read those? I'm sorry. You're right, Dennis. I forgot.
No. I mean, if we want to defer till next time, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just want to let you know you have them.
We have them. Okay.
Okay.
I guess I haven't looked at them. Or maybe I looked at them so long ago.
Okay. Fine to table it. Okay. All right. And then the only other revision I have is could we take that out and I'll put in a budget update in its spot?
Okay.
Okay. So is there a motion?
I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Can I,
Second.
seeing as how it's 9/11, should we put a moment of silence in to remember 9/11, or is that an inappropriate?
Sure. Okay.
Sure.
Yep. All right. So as three with those three changes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Is there a second?
Second. Then I seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Sarah says aye. Okay, great. All right. So we do a moment of silence first. All right, so that brings us to the first item is a budget update. So there were three sources of funding related to this project. The previous iteration had some money in the senior center feasibility project that came from capital stabilization and UDAG. And then that was left over from the previous efforts with Abacus. And then when our group started up last fall, there was about 14,000 left in that. Then when our group started up in the fall, the select board gave us $60,000 in ARPA funds. And then we were awarded the housing choice grant as well, and that was for 300,000. So we have, there was one last final bill from Abacus that was paid, and then we have paid three payments now to Catlin Architecture. The total of those being 85,000. So that, and then there was a posting in the Lowell Sun, I believe it had to do with the bid for the architect that was put out. So there was that additional one. So that squared us up with the ARPA funds and the remainder in the senior center feasibility project. The last last invoice that came in from Catlin Architecture is the first thing to bill to the Housing Choice Grant. So that balance of 300,000 is now $284,998.20. So I'll read that again, $284,998.20. So as of, do it,
280.
yes, as of today. Any questions on?
So conveniently, all the other invoices ended up exactly on the 60 plus 14? That's what you're saying?
It was 14,998.20, and so they were paid out. Only one of them had 75 cents. They were otherwise all flat dollar amounts because they were
Okay.
architect's charges. Aside from the Lowell Sun charge. So that's what makes us
Yeah, let me go back.
$87
What I'm saying is,
Right.
we had 3 sources.
Mm-hmm.
The last source was the 300. So the preceding 2 were spent 100%. It's basically.
Correct, yes,
And
those
those-
preceding two are now 100% spent. Now we're down to the Housing Choice Grant and we have 285.
So we
essentially, of the
used about
300.
17,000.
No, we've spent 85,000.
No, but I'm talking about just what was left over to take out of the housing grant.
Yes,
We only spent
yes,
15,
we've
right?
just spent 15,000.
Okay,
285.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right,
we have 283 left.
284.9, so 285,000.
And Katie, could I ask, and we need to encumber or spend that 285 by what date? Or it has
It
to be
can't be
accounted?
it can't be encumbered, but it has to be spent by June 30th of 2025.
Okay.
And we don't want to spend it necessarily all at the last minute because it's a reimbursable grant. And so it will take time to get that reimbursement from the state. So, and Barbara, correct me if I'm misquoting anything, but yeah, it needs to be spent by the end of June, the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct, Katie. So what you can do is you spend it and then you just have to make sure you submit that last reimbursement request so that the money comes in by the end of August of 2025.
Okay.
Great. So, we have the town manager with us this evening with a overview, a presentation on the borrowing process.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, those online, good evening. And thank you for the time to meet briefly with the committee. And I'm joined by Barbara Tierney, the finance manager, on the Zoom platform. And for those on the screen, I apologize. I'll get you a copy of my handout that's fresh off the press. But what we wanted to do tonight briefly is discuss sort of next steps required in terms of the borrowing process and the funding process for this project. And we don't have all of the information just yet, but we want to start this discussion sooner than later because there are statutory requirements and steps involved and procedures. And there'll be some decisions that the committee will need to make strategically. The good news is, as with any project of this size, myself and Barbara will handle the borrow authorization details as well as the debt exclusion details in full consultation with this committee as well as the other bodies involved. So the committee, I'm going to try to keep it quick and high level and not get way down into the weeds. So again, thank you for letting us meet briefly with you. So one of the first steps that will have to happen is that we will have to define an exact total cost for the project. So for the sake of today's conceptual discussion, and I want to stress that this is just conceptual discussion, I saw 3 potential scenarios. The Catlin project estimate, I want to just stress that, because the devil always is in getting hooked up on the numbers, was 14 point, I think it was 14.5. 14.5, and then with the Bishop Road site, if we factor in another two other scenarios, like 1.5 million added to that for utilities, and another scenario on the high end, which would be 2 million for utilities. Let's just say, for the sake of tonight, I just want to stress, we'll use the number of 16.6 million as a total discussion number. Now, we know that there's gonna be further work and variables to that, but let's just keep 16.6 million in our minds just for a discussion. But the first step at some point is we're going to need to come up with the actual total number, because Barbara's gonna need that number for the purposes of the debt schedule, borrow authorization, and all of the details. But at this point in the process, we have a ballpark number. So per the town of Ayer's financial policies, any one-time expenditure over $500,000 is generally funded through a debt exclusion. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. What is that? And additionally, per the town's capital planning policy, all capital projects, which this is, must be reviewed by the capital planning committee and subject to a recommendation by the capital planning committee to the select board for placement or consideration by town meeting warrant. Now, it sounds like a lot of steps, but on that process, the good news is that can be relatively streamlined, and these respective boards and committees already sort of know this is coming, so don't get caught up in, oh, is this huge process where we basically, want to check all of the boxes. So an exclusion, when we say a debt exclusion, increases the amount of the property tax revenue of the town for a limited or temporary period of time. So obviously, let's operate on the assumption that, say, we were to borrow for the whole project. Now, that may change. There may be some other funding sources, grants, and so forth. But we want to come up with a definitive number, which would be the maximum amount that we would want town meeting to authorize Barbara as the finance manager to borrow. So that amount is in addition to the regular tax levy, so it requires a process. And so a debt exclusion allows the town to raise the amount of our debt service payment for a project each year until the debt is retired. And there's a bunch of different options here, and this is sort of Barbara's wheelhouse, but let's just say, for the sake of discussion, we were going to borrow the 16.6 million over a 30-year period. Now, it could be a 20-year period. And Barbara works very closely with the town's bond council as well. I mean, you can get way down in the weeds, but just for our discussion today, so we just have a basic command of it. There are different terms on the borrow. So the debt exclusion, to get a debt exclusion approval, it's a two-step process that's set by state law in Massachusetts. And so the steps, and I've added some additional steps here from the town, but as I mentioned, the capital planning committee would review and make a recommendation regarding the project to the select board. And what that really is if you think of it as a public exercise to just go through the project, any questions at that point, we already sort of know a lot of these answers already. Would it be a debt exclusion? How are we going to fund it, or so forth? But it could be as simple as a meeting with the capital planning committee. The select board would authorize by a simple majority vote the placement of the appropriate warrant article on the town meeting warrant for the debt exclusion. So when we say there's two steps, the first step is we need a town meeting to vote by a 2/3 majority to authorize the borrow by debt exclusion. That's the first step. Then the second step is we have to get authorization by the voters on a ballot at an election by a simple majority vote. Now, it can happen in either order. You could do the election first and then the town meeting or vice versa. 99% of the time, I think you really want to do the town meeting piece first, because as you all know, and many of you are veterans at town meeting, that allows you the opportunity to make your full presentation, answer all questions on the project, so that when voters then go to the ballot, they have more information. But it's interesting that the law doesn't require, it can go either way. And the,
I'm sorry, just one question here. In this process, when it goes before either the capital planning or the select board, does one of those meetings consist of a publicized hearing, public hearing?
good
It needs to be
question.
advertised and so forth.
It does not.
It does
So
not.
it does not, and all of the projects that we have done, big, small, and so forth, we've never had a public hearing. It's just subject to the open meeting law.
Okay, thank you.
So then if you flip over onto page 2, so then so only the select board can authorize the debt exclusion question to be put on a ballot. So it's just another step at a select board meeting, take a 2/3 vote to approve the question. Once the question is approved, the select board has to transmit that question in writing with no less than 35 days before the election to the town clerk. Again, all these details we will handle, so don't worry on that. And then the debt exclusion question must pass by a simple majority vote at an election. And so if both town meeting by a 2/3 vote passes the article and the ballot passes at an election by simple majority, then the statutory requirements have been made for the debt exclusion. I also just put here, this is just a sample debt exclusion ballot question, and maybe some of you have seen these before or voted on these before. What's interesting is they're sort of very specific, but not very detailed. As you can see, shall the town of Ayer be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 1/2, so-called the amounts required to pay for the bond issued in order to design, construct, and equip a senior center building? Yes or no? The question doesn't even have the dollar amount in it, and it can't, which is fascinating. So the question is very specific. And so to conclude, and the most thing is to open up questions, what I sort of put is these are just proposed next steps, and then through the chair, Barbara may have a couple things she wants to add. In terms of proposed next steps, I think the committee needs to establish a definitive total project cost, and I know you've started that process, so we want to continue along those lines. Secondly, and this is sort of underway, myself and Barbara, to complete the due diligence on the borrow authorization and the debt exclusion. Third, I think once we have that definitive or that more defined number, the committee to develop and implement its public outreach, because we all know, I think you have a fabulous and exciting project. You have great site, in my opinion, great renderings, and that's gonna be great, but you know what, within a couple minutes, somebody's gonna say, how much is this gonna cost? So we want to have that for your outreach. I think some of these steps can also happen simultaneously. I think presenting to the capital planning committee, we can set that up. Also presenting to the finance committee, it would be good at a minimum. And then I think the one we need to give some thought to is the scheduling of the town meeting and the election. So as I put here under subpoint A, what I'll call the normal cycle, if there's such a thing, if all things being equal, it would be the April 28th, 2025 town meeting, and then the annual town election is on May 13th, and that should say 2025, not 2024. That would be the normal cycle, because at this point, the fall town meeting, we've missed the threshold for the ballot question, and they really frown upon a ballot question of this nature on a presidential ballot on top of it. Not that it isn't impossible. So then what I think is option B and C, though, is there could be a request for a special town meeting. And I think some of you will recall the board sort of did offer that as an option in the beginning of the process. That requires a select board approval vote, and it can be called within 14-day notice. It could be longer notice, but the minimum is 14 days. And also request a special election for a debt exclusion ballot question. Again, that requires select board approval. We've done that before, as some of you may remember with some of the school projects, whether it was the field or the high school project. So that's sort of just a very brief overview of the process. The good news is you have two great people in support. Well, you have Barbara and me, Barbara, but we will work with the committee on and go through this whole process with you. And we also have bond counsel and town council where needed, but I just wanted to, as you're getting close now to recommending the site to the select board, and you're gonna talk about some other due diligence, we wanna get this process going, so. I don't know if Barbara, if did I miss anything, or if you had anything to add?
No, the only thing I want to just mention is considering thinking about a timeline as you do the process, that will help me with how to format your borrowing.
Question. So if there is a chance that we might get a grant or some other kind of fundraising for this project that would lower the cost, but we're not gonna know about that before the town meeting or the vote. How is that usually handled? I mean, can you tell people you're intending to try to
Yeah.
do that?
So that's an excellent question, and it happens all the time. So ultimately, what we want is the definitive number. And what town meeting is gonna authorize, right, is that we could borrow up to that amount. Now, Barbara is not gonna borrow all of that right away, okay? So to your point, Ellen, and this happens all the time. Through the process, say we secure a grant or a considerable donation or so forth, then she won't need to borrow that amount. And that will also lower, the tax impact. So it does happen quite often. So,
Correct.
and we often say that time, and we're looking to borrow, what would be the maximum scenario? But if we get additional sources in the process, that would be good. One last question, and I think just
Dennis has his hand
for
up,
the
too.
sake of just discussion, because I'm sensitive to the fact that people latch right on to numbers. So for our purposes, I know it's a public meeting, that's fine, and we're just talking about a model scenario. So at 16.6 million, which is probably maybe on the high side, but at 16.6 million with a 30-year borrow, Barbara had done this analysis with it. It's just a basic, analysis, assuming the medium residential house cost of about 450,000. The approximate first year impact to that residential tax bill at that level would be about approximately $260. Now, depending on the borrowing, which Barbara can get into, you can borrow over the period of time and a level sense borrowing that keeps the amount same. There's another way you can borrow. It's a larger amount that goes down. Those are all details we'll work out. But what we want to do is get that definitive number, because it could very well be lower than 260, but if Katie did a quick exercise the other day, what was it? The equivalent of
It's the equivalent of one Dunkin' Donuts coffee a week.
one Dunkin' Donuts coffee a week, or there's different ways, and we've done this when we present things.
That's what it costs for coffee.
Mhm.
To explain, to the taxpayers, but we're not quite there yet, but I just use that as just a very rudimentary example.
First draft, yes.
Can we back up?
Wait,
Yeah.
actually, I think, hang on, Dennis, you had your hand up, sorry, this has been up for a while.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Katie. Just to, and I think the committee is probably aware of this. After the initial, when John first gave us his numbers in terms of the building cost, it came in, I want to say at 14.2 or 14.3. And I mean, I'm very much aware of, what that did not include, and that the real number was going to be higher. But the 14.2, 14.3 number was out on Facebook, within minutes of the, so, just for the public consumption or for us to properly communicate with the public, I think we're going to be looking at, well, why is it $2.4 million more now than it was before? So I just think that we
weren't
as
finished
committee
before.
members have to be aware that the public is going to be asking those kinds of questions between now and town meeting, and how might we kind of respond to that?
And I think that's important to communicate that all of these numbers are very much in a draft format right now,
Exactly.
just like we've been through 3 or 4 different versions of the floor plan.
Hmm.
This is the first draft of the cost, the first draft of the borrowing numbers. This will continue to refine as we refine the project.
Yeah, I'd add the qualifiers, a very, very rough draft.
Yes.
And we're just beginning to shape it.
Oh, I think John has his hand up too, sorry.
Just a quick point out. It was a good point brought up. The number, you understand, that was a hard construction number without any of the soft costs, which are utility costs, architectural and engineering costs, bidding costs, a lot of site investigation costs. So those costs are what we call soft costs. The first number out there was just a hard construction number without all that stuff that gets piled on. I just wanted to point that out. It was a good point that you brought up.
Okay, no, thanks, John. I mean, but being able to use that terminology, the distinction between hard costs and soft costs and borrowing costs, I think I just think that we're going to be in a position to have to explain that, as this process unfolds.
Right, well, yeah, so at some point, can we have like information on those soft costs? So that we can explain it. I mean, he said it right there. I didn't write it down.
So this first number, so all the soft costs I'm referring to the total project cost. Are all of those items in this second list
Okay.
there.
Okay, and then back to, Robert, you said something about 450,000, what was that?
The average assessed value.
so when-
Yes, the-
assessed
Yeah,
value.
so when
Okay,
Barbara,
okay.
and it's very rough, yep, so.
Okay,
we
I
took-
got it.
Get it? Okay, yep. So if you have $1 million house, you can do but we sort of pick a median.
Yeah, okay,
And that's to clarify the assessed value of the house, not what
Yeah.
Zillow says your house is worth
Yeah,
on the
right,
open market.
Tax,
Yes,
right.
assess the taxes.
yeah,
Right,
tax
that's
assessed
okay.
value.
And I assume we'll have to also build in fee, once we actually go to do the debt, we have to build in fees and interest rates and stuff like that into the number?
I think Barbara's
Yes.
numbers include that, right?
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes,
All right, at what point does somebody give us feedback who's had experience, on the financial committee or that capital planning committee about these numbers? If somebody goes, that's 5 million more than we've ever paid for anything, or that's blah, 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 or any,
We're gonna meet with them. We're gonna meet with Jimmy Bernard is on the capital planning committee as well, a member of our committee. He's also on the capital planning committee.
right.
He's not here tonight, Jim Bernard, but he's,
So, and we will speak to this in the public outreach and so forth, a couple things. One is, and Barbara already looked into this in great detail, we checked what we'll call the borrowing capacity of the town. Because one of my concerns was, because we have all different projects at different points, is like, do we have enough borrowing capacity? I can assure you, we have a very strong borrowing capacity to the point of over 50 million in capacity to borrow. So that's a good thing. The second thing, because we have such a high bond rating, our interest rates and so forth, and that does fluctuate, but we have one of the most competitive in value interest rates and so forth in terms of the borrowing, as we'll explain. Our goal, obviously, is we want to make sure we get the project that the COA needs and wants for seniors of today and the future, that is affordable. And there's the great debate. We all know, right? No matter who you do, there's gonna be some people that if it was a $10 increase, that's too much. I'm just,
Yeah.
So our goal is to come up with the most, reasonable, affordable number. And with a plan, for that outreach, and from my vantage point, I think we are in the ballpark. I don't see any red lights. From my vantage point, being like, oh, are there gonna be people that are gonna complain? Yes, that's the nature of the beast, but I think that we're at a good starting point. Now we gotta just really sharpen the pencil, as they say, across the board.
I have another question. Are there any debt exclusions that are about to retire that can, mitigate this number?
Through the chair, Barbara, what do you?
So we did have some debt exclusions that came off in fiscal 2024, but we did have a couple new ones also that had gone on recently for a ladder truck and a pumper truck. I can look more into what's going to be coming off the next few years for you if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Yeah, why don't we get
Sure.
a updated debt schedule, which, I mean, that's public
Mhm.
record anyhow, and we can see what's coming. That's another good point
I'll
as
make
we,
that a homework item.
present this, yeah.
And just so you know, that is something the capital committee reviews every year when we're looking at somebody proposing a debt exclusion. We do address that.
And the other thing, and when I talked to Ken the other day, made an excellent point too, is in your presentation, as you develop that. We also have to want people to understand that there isn't a land cost. I mean, if we had, say, all things being equal, we had to purchase that land, what would that be? So it's all showing the whole picture. Cause there's a savings there.
I think we have to. It'd be very important for us to keep reminding the public that the process that we've been doing as a group has taken us, a year, and we've diligently looked at properties, we've looked at budgets, we've hired the people to help us, consultants, things like that. So even the process itself has been a learning experience for all of us, I'm sure, and is gonna get us to a good conclusion. It's not loosely done at all. It's done correctly, I think.
And I'd offer one other thing, and I will get the specifics on this. And this is a great town in the sense, and this started way before me, but investing in its facilities. And if you look at the track record, we did the new police station in 1996. We did the fire station in 2006. We did the renovation of the town hall in 2000, 2001. We did the new DPW admin building not that long ago. We just did the new playground. It's time for the seniors and all the school projects, and we can put that together too, that this is now the investment that is overdue and needed for the senior center. And if you look at that approach that the town has had, in my opinion, over the last 35 years, it's consistent with that. And it's time to invest in that.
I thought that was great. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, so if there's any questions, through Katie, or you know where to find us, Barbara or I, and we will work very closely, with the committee through this whole process. So don't feel overwhelmed or any panic buttons, and that includes going to these meetings. I'm on most of these committees in a support role anyhow, so I'll be there. So thank you, for the time from Barbara and I just to start this conversation, and I'll get copies of the memo to everybody that's on the screen. I'll email those out tonight.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you.
So did you say you're gonna
Thank
put
you.
together that list of which projects you've done and when?
Yes, yep.
And how much they were?
yes,
Oh,
Yep,
perfect.
yep,
That's-
I'll
That'll be
get that.
very helpful.
So Barbara's gonna get an updated debt schedule for the committee. I'll work, with her, we'll get the list of the major projects, on that, and, we'll keep working on this.
Great.
Thank you. All right. So that brings us to preparations for the recommendation to the select board. So at their September 17th meeting, I think you will be able to be on the agenda to inform them, update them that we have selected the Bishop Road site and can offer some of those preliminary borrowing scenarios. I just wanted to pull the group, I'll put a draft report together, but to see if there's any particular points you want to make sure are stressed. Ken, I have your point about making sure that it's known that we don't have any land costs. We do need to put some money into developing the utilities, but we have saved money on the project that way, and that we have followed this very thorough process to get where we are now of looking through the land. And we've done the homework and whatnot. Is there anything else that the committee would like me to stress in that update?
Well, I think, well, there you go. The number of, and I think I sent you a kind of a rough draft of things, just the number of public meetings that were held. Which I think is over 20. And there were a couple of other things. But in any case, to kind of stress to the select board that the process to date has been very open to the public. We have, you know, taking questions from the audience at each and every meeting where there was public input. So there are no, you know, there are no secrets here about what we're asking them to do, and that the public has been as well informed as we could make them as the process unfolded.
We probably have to, even though I think we've said it already, but remind the selectmen of, in your statement, just the fact that we hired, you know, Catlin Architecture to support the supporting role of the design, development, and budgeting of the project. And we've reached out to we're gonna be reaching out to other consultants on the land. And whatnot.
Okay.
The land investigation, environmental investigation, however you wanna come up with it. Well, we can come up with it easy.
Yeah, okay.
I think we should express how excited we are. That we have Catlin doing the design, and that we have done significant. Surveys of other senior centers in the neighborhood, some which he built and others that he didn't design, built. But, and that we really have what we think is a quality design that will really meet the needs of our constituents in the town, seniors.
You can
And-
come, you know.
Yeah, I can go. You know,
Yes,
and that
everyone
this
on the
is,
committee.
that the reason we're
Helping
paying,
lost children's.
Oh,
oh, goodness. You know, is that we're getting a really quality senior center. And we're really excited about it and how the town will react to it, the
Mhm.
seniors.
how many people do you want there that night from this committee? As many?
I mean, as many as can attend, yeah, sure,
Mhm.
more the merrier. What time?
So the meeting starts at 6 on the 17th, and I told Katie, do everything in my power to have this first on the agenda. And then, you know, and think of this as sort of the capstone of the completion of this, just this chapter of this project. Less is more, like all the ideas, the more the merrier. The board knows you're coming, they're supportive, this is good. And you're basically presenting your recommendation, which is the Bishop Road site. They know that. They also know there's a whole bunch of more work to be done, but it's that way. We've done that exercise, presented it, get their blessing, and we move forward. I think you're in good shape.
Right.
So the 17th at 6.
Mhm.
If you could stay later to give my report, that'd be good.
You wanna flip Catlin to the next and flip it around.
We can't come to that or no?
He can, he can.
John can come too if you want.
I'm
Sure.
happy to come. I think there might be some questions that may
Yeah.
be asked that we might be able to address. And we might have more information by that meeting too for the committee in terms of costs, especially the utility issues that Dan's been working very hard on. Your DPW head, because we have two Dans, Dan V. So I think we'll be gathering more information, and also the renderings are being worked on. There's a lot of modeling going on in our office, and there should be some really nice upgraded visions of what this will all come together as. Be happy. to
Yeah, yeah, I have been working on the renderings all week. So I should have some stuff quite a couple of views from the outside, at least for you guys.
Good.
Wonderful.
Could I ask you, so do we anticipate giving to the select board on the 17th, the 16.6 number as our, roughest early draft number that they can, or are we leaving the number out of it and just stressing the kind of building and the fact that Bishop Road is the site?
So Dennis, this is what I would suggest is one, the end of the first chapter. So when you go, you're presenting to the select board, the task you charged us with, we've successfully completed. Through all of our efforts, we're respectfully recommending the Bishop Road site as the future site for the senior center building. So, and of course, they're gonna accept that. I think we can have a conversation just like we did tonight, talking in concepts in very rough numbers. But to answer your question, I don't think for the 17th, we're in a position that we're gonna say, okay, this is gonna be the site and we need the 16.6 million. We can talk about it. But I think the key thing is that we're further refining that.
Okay, no, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think what Robert said made sense, because when you look at the task of this committee was 2 phases.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So in essence, we're closing out phase 1 with the site selection
The
and
site.
building committee. So we're closing out the site selection portion right now.
Well, we won't really know the hard number until we've
No,
got the
we've
soil
got-
analysis done
got
and
a
all
lot
of that, and we find out
Right.
what's there,
we-
then we'll be
right.
able to say this is what it's gonna cost.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we haven't even closed out the site selection till we finish this list that I put together. But we have selected it. We're just gonna do more testing and more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
But they're not have to ask us that kind of question either. We're making the presentation about the site selection more or less, not.
right. And I think we're prepared. Somebody, because it's all, well, how much is it gonna, we can speak conceptually, on that, like we did tonight.
Okay.
But with the disclaimers, like, look, we're just beginning that process and so forth. We don't want anybody to get hung up on any specific number yet, because
Yeah.
that's not accurate.
$40 million.
Right.
Just watch them go, and then come back, then you come back and say, well, no, it's only 20, look, we saved $20 million.
Public hearing.
What you gotta be ready for, Mr. Diskin, is somebody in the audience is gonna ask, well, did you consider this site?
oh, yeah.
Yes,
really
and you
get
did.
that. Yes.
So,
Well,
They can figure another site out. I'll give
Yeah.
them credit on there right now.
Another town-owned site,
Another town on
because
site
we did put out the RFP for
2 times.
twice,
Yeah.
and nobody responded to it, so.
I think another thing we have to keep in mind is timing. Because Catlin has told us that the longer we wait before we start the project, the higher the cost goes.
Well,
So I think I would not want to wait until April and May to get approval of this. I think we really need to try to do, even if it's a late fall approval of some kind of a town meeting or something. I don't know how doable that is.
I don't think you're gonna finish steps that gonna talk about in a minute and go to all the public hearings. We have meetings that we're gonna go to, different committees talk. I just don't think you can get it done without going through most of the winter. Look how long it's taken us to get to where we are. It just takes so much more time than we all anticipate. I mean, I'd love to do it quick, right? I'd do it,
Well,
but we
Even if we
can't. It's
did
a
it
public
in
out.
January. So that we would be done and ready to start construction and everything.
John's gonna remind us it takes 6 months for him to do his drawings. I think.
Yeah,
that's
there's a
pretty
lot
rough.
of engineering. I will tell you a couple of things. We're just completed a very preliminary feasibility study for the town of Boylston for their new fire station. And they want to put it off to 2026. It's adding $1 million to the cost of the building. We're still suffering, even though the general inflation is coming down, the construction inflation is still pretty breathtaking. And that's why the numbers are what they are right now. We're trying to be somewhat conservative. The faster it moves, the better off we are. But what I think, and I will suggest this, and this sounds a little self-serving, so you can whack me anytime. If you fund the initial fee bit of the project, so we can get more accurate drawings with a more accurate cost estimate. The cost estimator is a $75,000 item. It's very detailed, and he has got the pulse on things. So it would tell us, are we in trouble or can we take longer to do this? He's throwing out some numbers at me that are kind of frightening, similar to what our numbers are right now. So I would just say that time is an issue, but the committee needs to go through this process, and whatever it takes to get it to a building that you're going to get, that's what's really important.
Right. So with the idea of a responsible sense of urgency in mind, let's move on to item number 5, which are the next steps for our site. Can you drew up a memo and then maybe after that, Dan, if there's anything you want to add to that as well,
Okay,
discuss those next steps.
so. Dan, you can come in anytime you want, bro. I'll just go ahead and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So at the end of the last meeting, one of the things that came up after that meeting was the urgency actually to spend some of this money that we have ready to go in the grant.
Right.
We want to move ahead with some of that money. So I sat down and tried to make a list of what items we could use that money to spend for now and get the results that we're looking for regarding the environmental investigation of the site. So the very first thing that I think we have to do, and I made a small printout here so you can see it. I don't have this for Zoom. I'm gonna pass it around, yes. The first thing we really have to do is we have to break this lot up. We have to create the lot. So that the rest follows, just pass those around. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about using an existing lot that's 76.5 acres, but we're only gonna need about 3 acres of that. In that corner, that northeast corner. So when we do the first thing we're gonna do is we need to hire a local engineer who's familiar with the project, familiar with the site. I just took this and put a little red highlight on the location that we're using. Off of Bishop Road or McPherson or what you call it. Get that A&R lot done. Now, the A&R lot basically creates our site. We know from John's experience, it's gonna be 2.5, 3 acres, we'll call it roughly. And we'll create a lot that will be big enough to handle both the building, the parking, septic system, and expansion septic system, because we're probably gonna need a supplemental one when we go for approvals. And that gives us the ability to focus the rest of the environmental only on the lot.
Right.
Not on the 76.5 acres. That's the whole point. Get that lot so that it's freed up. Now, it doesn't create any change of ownership for the town. It doesn't give the site to us as a site committee. It simply creates on paper an approval not required, an A&R lot is the term they use. That is there. If we don't even do anything, it doesn't change. It just stays there, can be used for anything that happens in the future. But by isolating that piece, we have basically set aside the spot for the rest of the investigation, which is what we want to do. So basically, that's the first task. So I'm recommending that we reach out to David Ross Associates, who did the actual work in 1978, these drawings right here, for the lot when the land was given from the Army to the town of Ayer. That was the predecessor company is named, not David Ross, what's his first? What's the bill? It's, no, it's not, it's,
It's.
Was it- Was it Perkins?
No, it's, yeah, Perkins.
Perkins,
Yeah.
yeah.
Charles Perkins Associates, I believe is the name. And they're right out of here, and the following up company that followed them along is David Ross Associates, so
We don't have to go out to bid.
we don't have to go out to bid for any of the stuff on this page. Good question.
A great question, and the good news is no.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
the answer is that we can hire consultants, it's part of our task. We actually said this to the select board
Yeah.
at the very beginning when Katie and I delineated what we were gonna have to do besides
Yes.
other fees. So we talked about this already, that we were gonna have to go this further step. So that's the first thing. So what I'm trying to do with this list is give us a way to vote this whole list tonight, either as one motion or individually, if you want to discuss each one at a time. And then get this started, so we can get right to the next step. So I'll leave it up to you folks. We'll start with the discussion on item number one.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So a lot of this is evaluating the site, right?
exactly. That 3 acre lot or whatever it's gonna
Okay,
be.
I don't have a copy with me of the contract with Catlin, but aren't they supposed to be paying for some of that in their contract?
They don't have to. It doesn't, no, not in the original contract. He
Okay,
gave us supplemental budget items for some of the other work. And then, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but your main goal is to have the final civil engineering.
Yes,
Project.
we own all
We-
the civil, but we need to do geotechnical investigation, some drilling. It's on your list, I'm sure. Deep,
So
what we
what I-
call deep drilling and
Right,
what,
borings, not borings.
boring. yeah, basically borings. You, Dan V has already done some test pits with us and it
Right.
all came out very positive. And the other good thing that you're suggesting here is that, Ken, is that by breaking off the lot, it resolves a lot of wetlands issues and other issues.
Yeah,
It's really complicated if you stick with all 76 acres because you're budding
Yeah.
off stuff. So that's a really good step, first step.
Anyone else on the question on the first one?
So
No.
all I would say is that how large the part, Ayer on the side of a little bit bigger than a little bit smaller. That is, when I think about, potential for, outdoor, another pickleball court or horseshoes or,
Garden.
whatever the
Yeah.
outdoor garden spot for a garden club potentially. And the building and the parking is one thing, but, and I'm sure that John could give us a pretty precise number on the building and the parking, but the other stuff around it might, add some to it.
No, there's no question about that. But the beauty of it is we don't care. If we have 3 acres, we still have another 75 so to use. Or 70, because it's all town-owned land. So basically, we can expand off the site if we had to in the future without having to do it in this, but I understand what you're saying.
Oh,
So, yeah,
no, all right. No, I was wondering, so we could, okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I just add, you gotta coordinate with DPW too. with that.
There might be DPW.
Yeah,
No,
you might
no,
make it 4 acres,
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
well, and that's why I want to
Basically.
engage the engineer too, because we'll figure out the topography, we'll figure out how it fits. And the whole works, so that's
Okay.
all good stuff.
So-
The next one is simply saying that we will provide Catlin's information to David Ross, so that they have the information that we have so far. And, can use that to double check the sizing and whatnot. Okay, so that's, anyone else on the breaking the lot up on item one or item two?
So, but can I suggest that I make a motion that we hire? Do I have to give a dollar number attached to that motion or?
No,
Do you
No.
want to do it item by item, or do you want to make one motion at the end to do these 4 things? That's up
Well,
to. that's
he's
up to
not doing them
everybody.
all, right? Ross Associates isn't doing all of them. I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to say who's doing them because we don't know yet, but it would just be
Yeah.
to conduct this certain specific task, right?
yeah,
Oh, I see. Okay. So something
I run
like,
the list.
I
run the list.
moved that I moved that a such and such firm be hired in order to assist the committee in breaking off a parcel from the lot or recommending.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye,
Claire says aye. Oh.
Aye.
Okay, sorry.
I'll refine that wording.
that's fine, it's good enough. So, Dan, you want to do, 3 and 4? Or you want me to do it?
Oh, go for it. I'll just chime
Okay,
in.
so-
Yeah.
So Dan has already been speaking to National Grid, has put out is it a work authorization or a work request? Is that whatever the term is, Dan?
Work
For them-
request.
Work request. So put out a work request to National Grid for them to give us an estimate of the engineering cost to do the design to get electrical to the site. We're thinking there's gonna be I'm not sure exactly what do you think, $8,000 to $10,000? I mean, we're trying to figure out a number.
Yeah, it could be more. When we did Park Street undergrounding and they designed, that was 15,000. So probably plus or minus in that range.
Okay, so this is basically a job that's in progress, but we're basically saying as a committee, we're okay to pay for that because we want to have it done. The sooner we can get that
So
figured
we're
out.
not giving ourselves any, guidelines in terms of what we will pay.
We can't, we don't know what they're gonna charge us for.
Okay, but you're saying we're gonna have Ross do it.
Right,
It won't matter how much Ross costs.
no, it'll matter. It'll probably be around 5,000, just guessing. It's not a big task. It's a
Alright.
$3,000 to $5,000 task, but we'll have Ross give us a proposal. Is that what your
Yeah,
question is?
yeah, I
Yes,
think
okay,
we
yeah, we'll
should
get a
have
proposal.
something that says this is what we wanna do, this is how much it's gonna cost, that we
Right.
would then approve that. Instead of just a blanket thing of, yeah, have him do it. You know,
That's fine, we'll
Yeah.
get a cost. That should be very easy for them to do.
Hmm.
We can't get a cost from National Grid until they come back with that actual
Yeah.
cost, and we don't have a way to negotiate with them, which,
So the motion that we just passed was to authorize hiring
yeah,
A-
somebody.
someone.
Right.
So,
right,
So I'm basically saying to the committee that you can take it how you want. I'm not interested in going out and having 3 or 4 engineers bid on the A&R job.
no.
Okay.
That's fine.
Um,
All right, so we have to bid separately on the National Grid thing?
no, there's no bidding. We just get it from
No,
them.
but I mean here to say, yeah, go ahead and. do it.
Oh, yeah.
yes, because Dennis did the. so
Make a
there-
motion.
Yeah.
So we authorize it.
Yeah, so,
I authorize that we, reach out to National Grid to, provide, or to ask them for a work request to, for the electrical service required for the new lot on Bishop Road.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair
Aye.
says aye, passes.
All right.
Yep, okay.
Now, the next one is, down Mr. Van Skelwick's, neighborhood. So now we're talking about authorizing expenditure for the town of Ayer, the DPW, to design and provide an estimate for the extension of the town's water service to the new senior center lot on Bishop Road. Or whatever DPW determines is the best method of providing water to the new lot on Bishop Road. So I'm just leaving that open,
Yeah.
However direction you want to tell us is what we have to do. And so we need Dan to comment on that. Yes.
Yeah, so I think the way I envision it is, I'd probably get a couple proposals from consultants. We don't really have the, capacity right now to take on designing this. So I'd probably get some proposals and then go from there, to move forward. So I think, I'll get those, I'll get the prices and I'll put together a scope and get the prices and we could, go from there.
Okay,
I'm, what Ken said, I moved that we, ask the DPW to perform the due diligence necessary to determine costs associated with bringing water to the Bishop Road site.
Second.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, chair says aye. All right, that passes as well. Great.
Okay, so the first steps were more or less procedural, but we have to get utilities there. The next is where we talk about environmental, which is, is another issue entirely and very important. So all of us agree pretty much, I think, that we need to hire an engineer or a consulting firm to do a phase 1, at a minimum, phase 1, 21-year report. Phase 1 is pretty much just an oversight of documents and a research project. It's not an in-depth, analysis of the soils. And then if in the event that we need to take that to a phase 2, which is more subsurface work, then we would have to have that continue right along. So again, we're probably talking, just guessing, $8,000 to $15,000, or maybe for both phases here, something along those lines. Again, the very important part here is that we're doing the analysis on the new lot.
Mhm.
So even in the event that we don't get that actual drawing done, well, it shouldn't be much to do it, we would then stake it out in the field. It's basically stake it out, have the engineer come out to the field, stake the whole lot, I'm assuming that one end of the lot is gonna end at the fence on the north, which is the fence of the Devon's land, the triangle. So that would be one perimeter. They really would only have to stake two sides. You know, the street is one, you know, the other side, east is one, so it's the back and the side that would stake. And then an environmental engineer would know within that area, you know, basically what it's gotta work with, so. It's a pretty simple analysis of getting that broken away. That's gonna give us an opportunity to get a complete overview of the environmental, look at the site. And we all know that has to be done. So again, I don't know exactly what the price is gonna be, but there's a firm, Omni Associates, who does this work. They'll, again, they're local. We can reach out to them for a proposal and figure it out. So that part of the work.
I mean, I'm not sure, I mean, just for public purposes, the committee at this point has no reason to think that there are any significant environmental concerns associated with this lot. I mean, we are doing our due diligence, but we don't have any kind of qualms or aren't uneasy that perhaps there might be something that we're unaware of. At this point, we feel pretty comfortable that the lot has no red flag environmental issues associated with it. Is that reasonable to say?
It's reasonable for the committee to say, but it's not reasonable without having a consultant back it up. It just doesn't make any sense. In this day and age, you just don't work that way.
No, I understand, but I mean, what I'm trying to do, I mean, well, all right, no, I understand.
We're not presenting this because there's a complication there. We're presenting it because it's the way you have to do it. In due diligence.
Yeah,
And take that
just to
step.
make sure there's nothing.
Right, and then we have a report and you know, you've got.
Yeah, if anybody asks.
Everything is there.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's. Again, it goes right back to the same question at the beginning of breaking off the lot for analysis.
Yeah,
right.
Okay, so now the next part, again. Dan may have a comment on this, but this is what's called a habitat assessment report now, another specialty type of report. Because the area of the lot is within the area of what we call in the state natural heritage, and also an area of critical environmental concern, which is an ACEC. They kind of overlap in the jurisdiction by the state, the two pieces. But due to that, we have to break down if there are any habitat, either plant or animal or whatever it might be, on that lot that would have an impact to the actual application that will go through to those
Yep.
state agencies. So in any event, we have to, again, do this habitat assessment report. A particular firm who's done many of those in town and seems to do almost all of them in town is Oxbow Associates. They might be out of Acton or something, but they typically are doing these reports for the developers in town who are building in town. So again, we'll reach out to Oxbow for a proposal, citing the location of the lot and go from there, but this really sounds complicated, but it may not be complicated. It may just be a very important tool. Because there are gonna be within the ACEC and with the natural heritage, some species that are gonna come up
Yeah.
for question.
But yeah, Ken, I can add a little. I did have an initial conversation with Mesa Endangered Species permitting. And so they did mention the two species in the area, the Blandings turtle, which I run into everywhere whenever we're in a priority habitat in air. And the other one is a New England blazing star. It's a plant. And so you need that habitat assessment to understand where they are and where their movements are. This needs to be done. So getting this done now ahead of time is a good idea. You know, initially they said for these species, we'll be able to permit it, but there'll be some, I wouldn't say restrictions, but some mitigation efforts you have to put together during construction to protect the turtles, and then post-construction, such as like fencing, things like that, post-construction. So I had an initial conversation with them, very high level, but I did gather that from there. So I guess this, in summary, I'm totally on board with moving forward with a habitat assessment as soon as we can. Because it does impact design and where we can, the New England Blazing Star, for sure, he mentioned that's along the roadway, so that what you try to do is typically work around the plant, but if you can't, you have to transplant it. So there's options to deal with these things, but it's good to know where it is.
And they'll, as Dan mentioned, they'll typically write a letter, it's got a crazy name called the no-take letter, whether they're interested in
Yeah.
how they do it and the description of the work. So like you said, we may end up having to fence the project. We may end up having to put a special set of hay bales, even though we don't have a wetland situation, just to create a perimeter during the process and how we handle that. So that's a necessary thing. And again, we won't know exactly what it costs till we get from something from Oxbow about the 3 acres or 4 acres, whatever we do. I didn't put the borings down here, but we could definitely do borings. Get that done. When we, after, let's assume that the layout is pretty much what we're gonna do, and David Ross puts it on a plan. We would then identify the corners of the building, the elevator, or other key spots that Catlin wants us to do the borings, and we could do that.
So
That's like
Catlin
one-
wasn't already planning to do boring?
Well, we can do it now.
We carry, yes, they should be done now, as Ken is saying. And we gave you a budget for that, beyond the fee. I think, I can't remember, it's $20,000, but that included a few other things too. And there's a number of companies that do that,
Yeah, we can get a couple.
that work in the area. I'm sure there's a bunch that's worked in your area.
One of the things that we're trying to do here is do what we can do now to create a smoother process later. If we, in John's defense, he's given us many things to think about. The things we can do on our own right now will just make his process in the future easier. He's gonna have the information from this, he's gonna have the information about the other thing I didn't mention in this is the plan of the site showing the floodplain. And we're not in the floodplain either, because the corner, I didn't draw it on that, but the corner of the lot I'm talking about is outside the floodplain as well. So all of that will come out when we do these site assessments and whatnot, so.
And also the borings, just so you know, the borings are what the engineers are going to want to have in terms of support for the foundation.
Yeah.
I guess my only question is, because it's adding us,
Yeah.
15, 8, 10, 20,
Yep.
Are we taking any risks by going ahead with this when we haven't gotten any kind of approval yet from the town to actually do the project?
So
We've
my
talked about-
my perspective is that I think these are questions that the townspeople are gonna wanna have answered before they can feel comfortable voting to approve a project of
Yeah,
this
and
scope.
we do have a grant, so it's not like our money.
I mean, the other thing that I've become increasingly mindful of is that this particular site, 76 acres owned by the town, some portion of which would seem to be appropriate to develop in some of the future years, that this information will be valuable to have for the town for many years going forward in terms of, are there environmental issues, et cetera, et cetera. What happens to the Bishop Road site over the next, 20 to 50 years, this information will be good to have, I think. So
Yeah.
even if the town is, I just think it's a good investment finding these things out now.
All right.
So, we did individual motions for everything under Part A. Do you want to do a motion for the 21E and the habitat assessment?
I'll make a motion that we do everything under part B as one block. And just,
Well, before we
We haven't got to.
before we do that, we'd have to talk about the traffic study then. I was just trying to catch us up. So, no, we can do, you wanna talk about the traffic study, then we'll take his motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I mean, do we really need a traffic study?
I
we're
think,
gonna do it eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
We're gonna do it.
Oh, okay, well, if it has to be done, I guess we might as well do it, but, I mean, I just see this as a no-brainer right there, I mean, it's just.
It's not a no-brainer at the intersection. That's where the question's gonna come up. At Park Street and Bishop Road.
Yeah.
So the traffic study will take us, like I mentioned here, in front of the site, but also to that intersection, out of that intersection. That's what people are gonna have a question, I think.
How many people go right? How many people go left? How
Yeah,
many people
it's-
turn in?
It's like the type of thing that.
Is there a light there now?
No.
Yeah, I think we need to do
I mean, you know, if we need it, we need it, fine, but,
It's the type of thing that can wait. I mean, it's definitely not gonna come up until we do a site plan with the planning board. That's when it comes up.
So
Right.
Dan, do you, I know that some years back, the DPW had done, you know, in terms of the Park and Main Street intersection, they had done a traffic study because there was some talk about putting a light in at Park and Main. So you have some understanding of the traffic flowing down Park Street at various times of the day? I mean, it might be going back 10 or 10 or 12 years now, I think.
Yeah,
Any
well,
recollection? No?
gotta be current.
Oh,
Yeah,
it does. All right.
Yeah, it's gotta be current.
Well, I just did a traffic study on,
They did one for the,
for the bridge.
yeah,
Recently, cause I
But
walk by, I
no one's done
see
one
them
on
in the
this,
road all
at
the
that
time.
intersection, I don't think.
John, do you think it matters when we do the traffic study?
For the planning board, as Ken suggested, it's going to be something they will want to have. And we'd like to get in front of the planning board once you kind of, whenever you decide to move ahead with the actual drawings, whenever that might occur, whether it's now or later, the planning board's going to have a real input on terms of, and I would go and talk, maybe Ken will talk to him, or maybe Dan V will talk to the planning board and say, is this something that you feel is necessary on this site? I really think it's a good idea, you know. I'm not familiar with Park and Bishop, that intersection, but if it's a concern, some kind of brief study, you know, some traffic studies are very complicated. They put out,
It's
Now-
easy.
this is not a very complicated one.
So I'm vice chairman of the planning board, John. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I didn't. Good. Well, what do you think, Ken?
I think you're gonna need it.
Yeah, thank you. But I don't think it's very,
It's a
gonna have to be
timing,
done.
it's a timing thing, like everything else. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
have
it's
to
not
be.
very-
done.
it's not
Yeah.
a real complicated one, you know.
Is it
I've-
very expensive?
We've done
Probably-
traffic studies that are
Really
too,
don't start saying something
We
like-
might as well do it while we're in the middle of
Yeah.
all the rest of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
But maybe wait a little longer, because if we find anything environmentally at that location, then the
Yeah,
area
right.
could move and the traffic would be different,
That's right.
right?
So we can,
Well,
the priority is almost consistent with the way the thing is laid out.
Yeah, so we'll do it, but we're not necessarily
This is
gonna
the
do it
last
them all at
priority,
the
the
same
bottom
time.
of the
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we do all of, or you do it.
Make a motion that we do everything under section B, all from B1 to 3, and we get proposals for what it's gonna cost and have them done.
Second.
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 All in favor?
Aye. Now,
Aye.
you mentioned boring, so we're gonna do that separately or what?
Again, there's no, that can stay right down the bottom, because we can pull that off very quickly, you know, but
But do we need to approve it?
let's get a price for it. We'll get a price for it. It's less than a day's worth of work with the machine,
Okay,
maybe half a day, a day's worth of, but we'll get a price for borings. Then we can
We'll,
approve
we'll
that.
give you a spec on it, okay?
Yeah,
What my
fine.
engineers like to have. We'll just give you the spec and you can give it to them and say, you know, this is what we're looking for.
So when we go out to, when we work with Ross as well, if we work with Ross, they will pretty much align us with some of these other requirements as well.
okay,
So having their drawing, having John's layout, we'll find a company that can give us a price for the borings. And then we'll look at that.
that's-
yeah, I have a
that's good.
company I've used in the past too. We can throw
sure.
into that pile of
Absolutely.
quotes.
Dan has plenty of people. You might even get it done for nothing.
We'll clear a spot for them to get in.
It's on your land, you better take care of it.
Okay.
And then, just as an additional update, Jim Pinard, followed up. He had said he would look into the propane costs. And so, they reported they would install two 1,000 gallon tanks and the piping connections for Lord said for free. And then we would just need to purchase the propane from them.
Oh.
So that's something.
Nice.
And then,
Oh, you gotta figure out who's gonna own the tanks, though.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
the
they are.
the only caveat I wanna throw in there, when you do propane. If Lorden installs the tanks, now you're stuck with, you always have to buy your propane from Lorden.
I
There'll be
think
a
that was,
contract.
yeah, that was the idea, was that
That's-
they would install it for free if we
It
bought it from.
There could be a procurement issue with that. We just have to make sure too, as we're
Because
Looking at it.
propane,
Okay, Yeah.
it's three something a gallon, so you're talking.
right. All right. So then I think the last thing on our list of next steps was the tech and IT budget. Dennis, did you want to give a little bit of an update? I know you've been looking into that in a little bit more detail
Yep.
with some of the other communities.
Sure. So I reached out to Paula, I want to say Duford, or Dubord, I'm sorry, at Wilbraham. And she's been great to talk with. And she sent me the spreadsheet that they had used for additional costs on top. So on top of what had been included in the construction of the building. And she kind of cut out the tech IT, audio visual portion of that, which John has, previously said would not be included in his estimates. And what Paula came back with in Wilbraham was an additional something on the order of 175K for their AV networking IT, build out. So that's that number. Also, yeah, John, and also simultaneously with that, it just happened to be that so that's the number. I think that and the reason I bring it up, I think that the number that we were looking at, is for 45 for the IT networking piece, probably needs a 2 in front of it. So I don't know whether that would be included in the 16.6 or on top of the 16.6. Okay, John, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. The town absolutely got taken to the cleaners on the IT. It came in at, probably at least 3 times anywhere else we've done this. And the reason why it came in, somebody let them go loose on it without any oversight, including our oversight. Every room got like 6 speakers when they only needed 1. They hung speakers all over the multi-purpose room, and they just went. And I think the OPM had something to do with that, but I would be, and Paula's number is correct, but we were appalled at that number. I don't know who was overseeing them, but it just went off the charts, at least by $100,000. And by the way, we pointed that out. They took out lights that we had in there in order to put in multiple speakers in a room that only needed 1. So I would say, be very cautious with that number. All right. I think 75,000 would be a good number. And you have, I'm sure your town has a vendor who works with you on IT. And I would highly recommend that they get into discussions with us when we go to do the budgeting, because that number is nutso. That's my 2 bits worth.
One of the things I was going to suggest is that I think along the way, we may need some smaller group meetings, between our meetings, was to suggest that you need to consult with the town IT director and town facilities director to get a sense of what they think the requirements would be in that sense as well. And then continue to refine that number. Again, this is a great example of how these numbers are drafts. They're going to move. We're gonna work them around as we get more specific with them. So,
Tech IT includes security. Or
So-
is security a whole nother?
No,
Yeah,
it did in Wilbraham.
Yeah, it has security and some cameras too. They, um, you know, senior centers, you do need cameras, mostly out the parking lot. We're kind of an isolated site, so I think, some kind of camera overview is important, and that's part of the deal too. You need to look at those. And whether you work arrangement with the police department, you know, who's monitoring, but there's also internal, security too.
so Dennis, I know this has been of interest to you, and I obviously have an interest in the IT setup for the building. Does anybody else, I think we could probably put one other member on if someone wanted to attend a meeting with Chuck and Cindy to look into it more. All right, Dave, okay, all right, perfect. So I'll send an email to both of them and propose some dates and then get that process started. And again, we're looking not to spec out model numbers, but just to get a sense of what
What are they looking
we need and to enough to modify this number to make it more accurate. So.
And Jess, could I add, and I spoke with Dave briefly earlier, or late last week. In terms of the kitchen, I know, John, that you had indicated that your estimate included all the kitchen appliances. Can we drill down a little bit on that? Is there anything that we need to be taking into account in the kitchen to make it functional that isn't in your estimate?
Yes, in FF&E, which is in our estimate, the dishware, a lot of towns, you know, we have dishes, we have pots and pans. That's in the FF&E number. The kitchen is the large gas stove, the ventilation system, the Ansel system, the commercial dishwasher, all of the stainless steel counters, the sinks, the warming ovens, and coffee makers and the coffee urns that hold the coffee. That's all included in this. And same with the, I think I mentioned refrigeration. And what we need to do is further refine this, is to understand how the town wishes to do their meals. Do they bring in outside meals, or do they prepare meals every day on site? And that requires a different kind of refrigeration system. But the actual kitchen itself is set up to do either one.
Mixer, stand mixer or countertop mixer, is that not included in a, or do you guys not do mixers?
We generally don't do stand mixers at this scale.
So just to clarify, you're saying things like dishware, pots and pans are included in the FF&E, but
Yes.
the actual equipment is included in the base build.
Yeah, including the ice maker,
Okay.
disposal system, with the dishwasher. These are dishwashers. These are the kind of dishwashers it takes a minute and a half to wash. You just take them out.
So it's not a fleet, it's a single rack or a fleet?
These are single racks being pushed through, a minute and a half each. I don't know what, I think you can stack
Yeah.
2 or 3
Does that
racks.
come booster?
Yes.
Get on.
Well, you gotta usually have a booster again, up to 100 degrees for 15 seconds to.
All right, great.
John, I want to thank John for sending some additional information after the last meeting on budgets, which hasn't been shared with everybody, but on the budgets, he gave us some more breakdowns. But amongst the divisions, where do you land the kitchen stuff in the divisions, kitchen equipment?
It's under equipment. I don't know. I have to go look at it. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, so you just call it equipment. In this case, it's
Yeah.
like number 11. Division 11.
Yes. What's that number there? I
Yeah,
don't, I-
it's
170.
it's typically Division
Yeah.
11.
yeah, it's Division 11.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So, got it. There's a typo there. You may realize it already in the word division for the whole list, but that's just somebody
Oh, I-
copying it over.
Oh, I must have sent you one early. My office manager fixed all those. I thought I fixed it before I sent it. Oh dear. Yes, there's a couple typos. I'm an architect. I'm lucky I can type.
Not an Englishman.
That's why they make spell check.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Not an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. So any other,
There we go.
you got another one? Okay.
So I didn't realize we were gonna go into this much on the budget, but the term furnishings, meaning not FF&E, but does that include actual furniture like chairs and tables and things like that?
No, the
didn't-
furnishings is, there are a lot of things that end up in the building that are not specific to, an exact category. And things like, the janitor's closet has racks holding up mops and, a lot of stuff like that. I can't, I can give you, if you want me to go a little further, I don't know what I sent you a typical 60-page breakout of how these things get laid out. Maybe I should send you that. Our cost estimate from our last job, it's a final cost estimate, and it itemizes everything. And I don't have it in front of me, but there's a lot of odds and ends furnishing items that get
Got it.
into the
Well,
deal
important thing, you don't have it now.
that you don't sit on. That you don't
Yes.
sit on.
That's what I put the note there.
Yeah, be good to see.
Yeah, we need,
Yeah.
we need a category that we call furnishings for the outfitting of.
You should clearly understand right now, we're so early in the design that we don't have all those items lined up. We don't know
Yeah.
exactly what they are. I can show you what they typically are, like, let's say with Wilbraham. I'll give you the complete breakdown of how Wilbraham did it. And then you can see what typically makes that up. That would be helpful. I could get you that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we
Okay.
talked about IT. And we talked about, so under IT, going back to IT again, does that include the phone, the cable, screens, AV systems like that?
Cabling is done by the town
Electrician?
IT people, because if we have the public bid contractor do it and there's something wrong with it, everybody points the fingers at each other. Since
So
the
Ken-
IT guys are in there, we asked the town and their IT number that I carried there
Yeah.
in the soft
So-
cost.
So Ken, the number that I got from Wilbraham did, six screens at $1,000 each. The security system, the wiring, and again, I assume that some portion of the wiring will be tied up with what the electrical wiring is, and I'm not exactly sure how they break that off, but or whether they do it at the same time. It was a pretty comprehensive number from Wilbraham in terms of the AV system and all the rest. But as John pointed out, he thinks that Wilbraham may have overspent on these things. So, I mean, my overarching goal is simply to, now that we're kind of talking about 16.6, does that number come down a little bit or go up a little bit? I'm just trying to, get our best guess in place before we, as soon as we can.
Right. So
Okay,
all right.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. So I think that brings us to updates. Any other things on next steps or budget clarification questions? Okay. So, Dan or John, I printed for everybody the 3D, the first draft of the 3D rendering. Did you want to?
So we have a budget for the flag. We have a budget for the flag.
You like the
Don't
flag
look-
that I put in?
yeah. Don't look at the colors because it's being printed out right now as kind of a neutral blue-gray. But the colors will be worked out in great detail when the rendering goes up to the next level. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so this is a base level rendering that I got going on. I'm gonna I don't have the exact image in front of me right now, so I'm trying to go off of memory. I will develop this more, add a couple more views from different angles, but you can see in the far angle, we got far distance, we have our pickleball court. Oh, you have a, hold on a second, I think oh yeah, there it is, okay. Much better. Now that I don't have to do this from memory. Okay, so we got off to our left, looking
Right.
at it, yes, right is our pickleball court, coming in our entrance, coming into the building, into the site. You come along and you have your drop-off area right up in front. You have your flush curb with your bollards coming across. Right off to the left of that entrance is your cafe area. So that's got some seating. There's a little pergola there. And just a nice little area to rest for anybody that needs to get picked up or talking or chatting or getting ready for your next activity.
Having your Starbucks,
There you go as well. Yes. And then just off a little bit more over to the left is you're going to be your ADA parking. Those signs will be shown as ADA parking, but like I said, this is draft right now. And then out farther back to the left is your would be the patio area that's coming out of the multi-purpose room, where those umbrellas are at the back.
And also, we added, you won't see it in this plan, but Dan, we've added some patio area adjacent to where the meal site is in the multi-purpose room. It was brought up at our last meeting, and that's included.
We added what?
So the patio, this particular rendering shows the patio kind of off to the left of the building where the umbrella
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But we had asked for it to be more adjacent to the meals side of the multipurpose room than to the end of the building.
Oh, we did.
Okay.
Actually, we're suggesting,
All around.
both locations.
Both, okay, both locations, all right.
And
And I will end up
walking
showing, I will end up showing a rendering of the back to better.
Yep.
Yeah, you better see that.
Yeah, I
People
understand
didn't
it
wanna
because
walk
this is
through
most
exercise.
people here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they want an opportunity to
Yeah.
enjoy it. It doesn't have to be as big as this, but
Mhm.
you know, for a couple of people who wanted to eat outside, they could.
You can also walk, right now, I think, Dan, we still have that covering going around the perimeter of the building as an option and add alternate. The structure of the overhang, I think, Dan, you can talk about the width of it.
So the width, I brought it out a little bit more. It's about a 6-foot wide walkway going around the whole building. It's covered. And it's going to be it's going to kind of be structured towards the building. There are some columns that are spaced there, but those are not structural columns. They're kind of there to give the roof some kind of structure. Well, the feeling of structure.
We don't want people think the roof's going to fall on them.
Yeah, we don't want, exactly.
Well, the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a steel structure, so we can cantilever that roof, which will lower its cost quite a bit because if we put columns every 8 to 10 feet with a foundation, it gets pretty pricey.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, I think it looks beautiful. It's really
I like
coming
it.
together. What does everyone else?
Did this
Thank-
change significantly since the last time?
So
I know there was a big question about gables and.
Yeah,
No,
we balanced out we didn't offset the gable.
the elevations are the same as last week's. Well, not last week, last meetings. Only little detail stuff has kind of changed. but the gables are the same as what we were looking at the last meeting.
This is just the first 3D look versus the
Okay,
flat,
flat.
you know, on the.
Yeah,
So we
and,
had
and as Dan, as Dan develops this,
Put 'em
you're
on the
gonna
same
be much,
plot.
much more detailed.
I don't think they know. It's like $5,000.
All right,
But in our park, you could,
wonderful. So,
sometimes you put that.
any questions about the latest, any questions about that? All right.
No, other than it's kind of dark.
The-
I can't really, he's talking about there's a
Well,
purple.
Where it was
If you look
printed,
at it, I think it's just my printer that printed it a little bit dark. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better.
Right.
And this is on the town website as well, so you can
Okay.
pull this up at home.
Now, will this be available for us to give to the selectmen on the 17th?
There will be
Yeah,
more. There'll be
Yeah, I
more.
should be able to get a couple more views to go
And
alongside
lighter.
this.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
have more sun and.
I
brightness.
have, yeah, I have a Barda Sky on the one I've worked on today. This one's kind of gloomy.
So, so Dan, I have to have, the report to the select board in order to be included in the packet. I have to have it in by noon tomorrow. So, yeah,
That won't
so
happen.
I think, you know, I think we can go
Okay.
with this for that purpose.
Alright.
You know,
Yeah.
along with.
Yep.
So, I
Alright.
mean, and technically speaking, the update is really only to update them that we have selected the site. We can certainly include this work we've done thus far, because it does show what we've done to date, but
Yeah.
the main point of that update on the 17th is the actual site selection.
But anything, I think anything that we can do to see, to show them how great of a
Oh, yeah,
building it
yes,
is just gonna encourage them to support us
agreed.
and
Hey.
help get it
Hey,
done.
Dan, maybe Dan, could you lighten this a bit, get more sky
Uh,
in it?
I was gonna say, I did complete 2 renderings today that I did not hand out. They're on my computer right now, so I could probably get you those in
Thank
the
you.
morning.
Yeah. it
Yeah,
would.
Okay.
I'll talk with Barbie in office, and I should be able to get to you that.
For the
And we're all-
purposes, for the
Period.
purposes of Katie presentation on the 17th, you know, to her point and to Robert's point earlier, I think if we let the process unfold as it's meant to unfold, let them know that we have a site, that we have some preliminary sketches of what the building might look like on that site.
Thank you.
But and then let the questions come if they do. But I think it might be easier for the select board to allow the process to unfold as it's meant to unfold, as opposed to asking them to overcommit before they're kind of ready. So,
Right, I think what we want them to, on the 17th, what we want them to do is accept our recommendation for the site.
that's right.
We're not asking them to accept the recommendation, the floor plan, the price, and all of those things. So I think we can show them the work to date on the floor plans, the renderings, you know, all the things that Catlin has provided for us.
I think we should get them to approve the site first, and then
Right.
go, oh, and by the way, here's where we're at. As opposed to saying, oh, look at all the stuff we have.
I think it's gonna be important to bring that plan right there.
Yes, so that will be included. That's the
Sure.
Yeah,
site.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we've been working on.
Yep. Yep.
Along with other things.
But again, we can give them the report, the progress report to date. But the ask at the meeting is for them to accept our recommendation, not to accept the recommendation and the floor plan
I understand.
and the renderings. Yeah, I just
That's
wanted to make that clear. Okay. All right.
With this, we can at least show them we were done talking. we
Yeah.
worked on the building.
Right.
Take a look at all this stuff.
I bet it's already, I would say, enough of them has seen that if we were gonna have pushback by now, they would have reached out and said, hey, have you considered this or considered that? I would think the select board would probably just be thank you for your work.
Yes.
We love your proposal. Keep going.
Right, yeah.
That's
I don't-
what I
I
would
don't
expect
think
out of the select board.
So before we anything else on that before we go to public input? I have one thing I forgot to mention earlier. So the senior center I'm sorry, I asked a question and then didn't leave anyone time to answer, to respond to. Anything else before?
And Catherine's big book.
Yeah, anything else from John, from your side before we?
No, we're all set on that. Thank you.
Okay. So, the senior center is going to have a booth at the Newton Street Festival. And so I was sort of hoping that members of the building committee could share the shifts. That's from 10 to 4 on, oh shoot, is it the Saturday, the 5th? I don't have the date, right? Or does someone have a calendar? Is that,
I don't know if it's the fifth or the following. Is it fifth?
hang on, just, I can go find.
This is a Saturday, 12th is a Saturday, 19th.
Yeah, it's the 5th.
The rain date, 6th.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's the 5th.
First Saturday of month.
I only do that because there's a work commitment every Saturday in October, right? So the 5th, so the 5th is the Newton Street Festival. And, I'd love to have members of the building committee to come staff that booth with me. I was thinking this would be a great opportunity to print out on some foam board, sort of where we are with the floor plans and things to begin to do some public input, reach out to folks that, I mean, it's an opinion. You just like it? Okay, and that's a different set of people than we reached out to. Get some feedback. I could bring the surveys, or it can be more conversational, just to a lot of young families that go to that, just to start the process. Does that sound like a good strategy?
Yep.
Okay.
What time?
It's 10 to 4. So I can send out an email asking people to sign up for specific shifts within that time.
You know where your booth is gonna be?
I don't know, but I've asked for electric, and last year I was basically right outside the back door. Chuck pulled an extension cord out the back door of the Great Hall and then down those little steps. And so I was right there next to Susan Copeland, because she also needed electrical last year. So I don't know, that could shift because the Habitat parcel isn't available for booths. So there's presumably some rearranging going on there, but, is there, you know,
So you need electrical for the laptop?
I don't need it for the laptop. I had asked for it last year so I could run just a PowerPoint presentation of photos of things that we do at the senior center through. So I could still do that. I technically can make that work without electrical. I can run the battery and then do an external, but it's easier if I have it. So if the committee is on board with that, then do we need a motion to authorize me to go spend the money to, I guess we could probably use most of what's there just to mount it on the boards and everything. I don't think it's gonna cost much any money, but
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that we authorize Katie to spend what she needs to spend to make this.
Some displays, so we will be that.
So it's just less than 289,000.
right, yes, okay. Provided I don't spend more than 288,000. That seems fair. All right, all in favor?
I,
Right.
All right. There's
So then you're gonna be looking for us to give you a time that we're available,
yes, and I can send that out via email. That's fine. So
available 4 to 5.
4 to 5.
well, that's good, because that's when the
Breakdown?
breakdown is.
Yes, perfect.
I mean, can we just do it now?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I have something else, another fair to deal with that day, so I would like to get a slot in here.
Okay,
Okay, how about, I'll do 2 o'clock, can I do 2 o'clock?
okay. So can you do 2 to 4?
Yeah, 2.
Okay,
I'm babysitting for my granddaughter, but she takes a nap and theoretically, and goes to sleep from 12 until about 1:30.
okay,
But I could, I should be able to come in.
Okay.
On that.
all right.
area.
I'll tag team because I'm probably gonna have a booth for the disabilities commission. so
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
I don't know. I can't nail it down yet because I have to see if I.
sure, no problem.
But
Um,
I can float.
and maybe maybe we can figure out if it's possible to have our booths near each other or next to each other.
The last time we were like right up against the tree at the end of the parking lot at
Okay,
the bank right next to.
right, okay. Okay. Are you available for a shift?
I'd take the early time for everyone wants to be late.
Okay, so you want to do 10 to 12?
Do
Okay.
we have a tent or do you need help set up or?
So I have a tent, a table, the town of Ayer tablecloth, and then I'll have newsletters and back scratchers and other little swag items. I'm not, it's not a complicated setup, so I'm fine to set up.
We should be able to do something on the Friends, maybe. I think we'll be able to put together something about the Friends.
Yes. Good luck.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you do have news about the friends. We're
Okay.
getting a bank account as of tomorrow, and we're going to have, get a check from about $700 from the Friends of Neshoba Hospital. But, you know, they're sending what they have to, senior centers in the area. And so we will start out with $700.
And there's $17 in the coffee donation fund towards our 16.6 million, so.
Okay, do I hear 20? Can we make it? Oh, this is not a bid.
Let's make it 37 right now.
Yeah, we should ask for members, but we said memberships was $20, so
So,
we'll get members.
yeah, so maybe the friends can get together and come up with a membership form, maybe, and you could start collecting memberships at that. At
Yeah.
that thing, so we could divide the table, or I can bring a second table so that there's space for everybody's stuff. Yeah, all right.
Are you gonna need help putting together some background materials?
That's a very good point, so.
About to inform not just selectmen, but, you know, as we start doing public meetings. You know, about the project and,
I would love to have some help. We had talked at a couple of meetings ago about some of the deliverables we would want to have for the public input process.
yeah, I can help with that.
Okay, great. That would be fantastic. And we'll probably need to have another meeting where our core messaging for that is really nailed down as a group. And then that will help inform what Ellen and I put on the. Okay,
Let's get under other, let's do under next steps.
yeah, sorry, I kind of bounced back up to the other. All right, so I think that brings us, if there's nothing else, that brings us to public input. There's one person online and one person in person. Any public input?
Did you have any questions or anything? Did you have any questions?
Oh, no, I'm all set. I'm all,
Okay,
I just want one question. Now, the Bishop property, is that ours?
Yes.
That's ours.
It's town
yeah,
owned.
yeah, no,
It's town owned? Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Nothing to buy.
nothing to pay.
We already own it.
All right.
All right.
Anybody else?
I think so.
Dave?
All right, so our next meeting, so we've got a lot of reaching out to local firms. I guess I didn't ask Ken, are you gonna do that? And aside from the ones that Dan said he would reach out to?
I can,
Okay, that'd be
I mean, I
fantastic.
start with Ross.
Yes.
proposal from Rob.
Okay, so, in terms of our next meeting. We could meet to talk more about the publicity documents, those deliverables. Preparing for public input, and then we can provide updates on these items. So what do we think is a good timeline for that? I am out of town the last week of September. You guys can meet without me. Very capable co-chair here.
I'm gone the 24th and 25th.
Okay, those are the same days I'm gone. I'm gone that week of the 23rd. So. I don't,
What about the first week in October before the, that Saturday thing?
okay,
In case there's any prep that needs to be done for the tenth or whatever.
okay. Does that work? I always have a phone.
So
in
the
front of me for
second
meetings.
is the Wednesday.
Second, okay. That work for everyone?
It's good, Wednesdays have been good, then.
So Wednesday, October 2nd?
At 6 p.m. here at the senior center. All right. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Actually, I have a question.
Oh,
I-
yes, sorry.
How will we? If I get these proposals and okay, here's my question. Does the committee want to wait all the way? I shouldn't say that. Does the committee want to wait till October 2nd to authorize the proposals that I received? Or is there a system that we can communicate before that?
So I
One
think,
by one, let's say I get a Ross proposal and you guys would say. "You okay with that, or do we?"
so I think you can't substantively advance the business of the committee outside the meeting. So an opportunity for us is if there is something to be proposed, we don't have to wait. October 2nd can be our next official meeting at this point. If we need to call a meeting between now and then, it could be a single item agenda, it could be a totally Zoom-based meeting.
How about I throw this at you?
It just needs
We
48
make a
hours.
motion that if it's less than $7,000, he can enter into it and go. If it's more than 7,000, then we come back to us and then we can discuss it.
I don't think that's comfortable for Alan. That doesn't sound like, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, everybody else.
Ballpark idea.
Oh, yeah, ballparks, but doesn't hurt to get the numbers. You know, but it's just gonna be another 3 weeks.
What will you feel most comfortable with?
But I feel most comfortable with may not be legal.
Yeah, I mean, that's all right. I just.
First thing I want to say.
So,
I have to operate within the premises of the.
so if you look back at the motions we made, they were motions to authorize the hiring of, to authorize a work request, to authorize the expenditure for the town of the DP, you know what I'm saying, like.
Yeah.
We made them where technically speaking, you could go ahead and do it. You see what I'm saying?
So if we wait until October, will they have enough time to do what they need to do before winter, whatever?
I don't know, that's,
I
that'll
mean,
be
the
part of
thing-
the process
I
of
mean,
figuring out. What I'm
Yeah,
talking
if they say, well, if you start, next week, then, yeah, we can get this done, but, I don't wanna hold it up because of waiting for a meeting. I like, Katie's idea that this will be our next meeting, but if we have to meet to go over, anything.
So my task is to talk to them, get a proposal and find out when they can start.
Right,
That's what I have to do.
and how long, what's the timeline? So if when they start,
So how long does it take to do the report?
to do the report, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's all part of the proposal, that's all.
Right. And then if it looks like a great deal and they're ready to start and it's gonna cost like $5,000. I don't have any problem going ahead. Or if you wanna say 7, I don't know.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm gonna lean on the expertise of our really capable committee here and
Yeah.
say. You've done enough of these projects along with Dan to know whether that's a good price or not. So I was comfortable to go ahead and authorize those things.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I want everyone to be comfortable.
Well, the biggest expenses are probably gonna end up with Dan, because he has to get the price from National.
Yeah,
Grid anyway,
right.
so. The other ones,
Yeah,
okay, let's,
he's not gonna have a choice, but,
No.
and maybe you feel more comfortable if you did it in consultation with Dan.
Yeah,
why
fine,
don't we leave it that way?
fine.
Dan and I have to consult
Yeah.
before we have to do that. Okay.
Okay.
That's great. Anything else before a motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
right?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Bye.
And chair says aye. We are adjourned at 7:55.
Okay.